I'm Allie. I'm the product manager for NVN for Mozilla. And my colleague over here, Eric Shepard, is our lead writer. So he is in charge of all of our open web documentation. And he'll be presenting an introduction, very short, to NVN, and some of the documentation and community. And then we'll be letting everyone translate away. And what we're hoping is to get help with some of the apps, JavaScript, HTML documentation for open web that we have on NVN to become in Portuguese, or Spanish if you feel like doing that as well, but Portuguese. So we can better reach out to everyone in Brazil to learn about open web.
Hello. So, yeah, like Ali said, my name is Eric Shepard. I'm in charge of the developer documentation at Mozilla. Basically, what that means is I oversee not only the people that work for Mozilla, paid employees of Mozilla, but also our community, which includes hopefully a lot of you, in making sure that we have great documentation for the open web, for HTML, CSS, JavaScript, all of these great technologies for creating content and apps on the web. If I start going too fast, please let me know. I tend to be a very fast speaker, and I know that doesn't work well for people who are trying to translate in their heads. So please don't hesitate to stop me and make me repeat anything I say. I'm going to give, hopefully, a very short introduction to what MDN, the Mozilla Developer Network, is and what we do. And then I hope to give a short demonstration of how to use the site to write and translate developer documentation about the open web. So, the Mozilla Developer Network is where we document everything about the open web. We document the open web and web applications for people who are developing that kind of material. That means, like I said before, JavaScript, CSS, the DOM, all of these technologies, including the new APIs that are coming along for mobile phones, such as web SMS, web telephony, things like that. I don't know how many of you saw, we're at Chris Heilman's presentation yesterday about these technologies. These are all of the things he talked about yesterday, are technologies that we need to be sure have excellent documentation, both in English, which we're still working on for a lot of these technologies because they're so new, but also we want to get those translated into Portuguese, into Spanish, and into other languages as well. But obviously our focus here is on Portuguese and hopefully a little bit of Spanish, as I know we have at least one or two native Spanish speakers here as well. Also, we do have documentation that we're doing for people who are working on Mozilla-based applications, for people who are actually writing Firefox code, writing Thunderbird code, and so forth. Obviously, this is a more deeply technical area and not a priority necessarily for translating our content right now, but we do have that as well. And then, of course, we also have documentation for people who are writing add-ons for Firefox and for mobile Firefox. Again, that's not really a focus for our localization efforts, but if it happens, and I keep walking in front of the screen, I'm sorry. And the, I should like stand on the other side or something. Okay. You're so helpful. My boss. Obviously, if that happens to be something that interests you, feel free to go on ahead and translate or even write in English if you feel, really enthusiastic about doing that. Documentation about that, that's fine. Let's get to it. We call this radically open documentation because our documentation is so open that anybody in the world can sign up and edit the documentation at any time. There's no, submit documentation and have people review it and all of that, and then like 3 days later, finally your changes show up. No, you click a button to edit, and immediately, once you save your changes, they're visible to the world. There are some risks in this because we do wind up with people throwing spam up on the site. We have had to remove some extremely inappropriate pictures from the site once in a while. There was also a time a couple of years ago where a second grade school teacher kept setting up a website for her class on our site over and over again. We would delete it, send her a friendly email saying, sorry, you can't really do that here. And a couple of days later, she would create it again. And this went on for 3 months. But we finally got the message through to her. And so we do have people all over the world who are constantly watching to make sure that nobody posts anything inappropriate, or and also they review changes to make sure that there aren't errors, things like that. So this is a very big community effort, and we rely a lot on community members to help make sure that our content is as good as it can be. So contributing to MDN, there are a lot of things you can do to contribute to MDN. One thing you can do, it's as simple as you see a typo on a page, somebody has spelled a word wrong, something like that. Log in and fix it. It's a very simple thing to do. Anybody can do that in not just in English, but if you're reading a translated page, you see a mistake or a translation error, just log in and correct it, no problem. Similarly, if you see somebody who's made an actual factual mistake, they have explained something wrong, log in and correct it, no problem. If you see a page where it would be more useful if there were an example, a few lines of HTML, snippet of CSS, feel free to add one. That's always useful. Some pages are actually marked as, we need some examples on this page. That's a great way to help, especially if you're already a web developer and you happen to have some code that is a good example of how to do something. Grab a few lines and paste it in. That's fantastic. Obviously, a focus here today is translation. This is something we need a lot of, and I'm actually going to talk about translation and localization in particular here in a few minutes. And then obviously the biggest way to contribute and the most time-consuming, when it takes the most work, is actually writing brand new documentation from scratch. This is something that we love when contributors do, when our community does, because we only have 4 writers on staff at Mozilla right now. And the web is a very big thing to try to write about, and there's just too much for the 4 of us to do by ourselves, which is why we want to have a lot of help from the broader community outside of just the staff at Mozilla. And we have a lot of great people in the community that do a lot of fantastic documentation. In fact, the people who are in charge of our CSS reference and our HTML reference are not employees of Mozilla, they're contributors, and that happens a lot. The JavaScript reference also is a community member that is kind of leads the effort on our JavaScript documentation. And this is really helpful for us because it helps us feel good about our ability to get a reasonable amount of documentation, enough documentation for these things to get the word out about these technologies. Let's go. We are in the process right now. We are changing from one wiki platform, one software platform, to another for our documentation. So today, you guys are going to be experiencing our brand new software that began opening to the public about a week ago. It is possible you may run into some problems with it. If you do, feel free to file a bug. There's a button at the top of the page for filing bugs, so we welcome that. This is going to be the first group of people that are really using, in a big way, our new translation user interface for doing, translation of documentation. And so it is entirely possible that you may have suggestions or find problems, and we welcome those. So please feel free to report any problems you have or any ideas you have. So the first thing you need to do is sign in using Persona, formerly known as Browser ID. If you don't already have a Browser ID account, you click the Sign In button on the site. You'll be asked some questions, and you can create a Browser ID account and log right on into MDN that way. When you log in for the first time, you'll be asked to set up a username and answer a couple of very simple questions, your name, things like that, your email address, so that the software can contact you under certain circumstances. And then you'll have a profile, and from there you're ready to begin to edit the content. When you're on a page, and if you want to change the documentation, all you need to do is click the Edit button. It's up at the top of the page, right above the content of the documentation, to the right of the page title. When you're done, click the Save Changes button. It's actually quite simple. Translation is going to obviously be a focus today, and that's what I'm going to talk about next. At the top of the page, there's a drop-down menu that you can pull up with a list of the languages that page is available in. If you can, as you can see here, this particular page that I took this from is available in Spanish and Chinese as well as English. If your language, Portuguese or Spanish most likely, in this case is listed, you can choose it and you can see what that page looks like. If your language isn't there, you just choose Add Translation, and our translation interface appears so that you can begin to translate that article into your language. As you can see here, here's a little piece of the page that appears when you choose Add Translation, and we have Brazilian Portuguese here. We do have some pages that are already in European Portuguese, and it's possible that that may be useful as a starting point, although a lot of those have not been updated for a very long time, so it's going to kind of be up to you to look at them and see if they're worth using as a starting point for your translation work or not. So let's go on to the next slide, please. The translation editor looks like this. On the left side, you see the English version of the page, and on the right is an editor. What you see is what you get, style editor for your language, and you use that to do your editing work. Once you're done, you just click the Save button like you would for any other page. There's also a preview button you can use to see what the page will look like when you're reading it, because the editor, although they call it what you see is what you get, it's not quite. Things look a little bit different when you're actually reading the content, so sometimes it's useful to use the preview feature. So we do need your help. We have nothing in Brazilian Portuguese right now. A reason for that is because on our old software it did not let us have separate Brazilian and European Portuguese. And also the Portuguese team was entirely European Portuguese writers, so we chose when we switched to our new software to go ahead and put all of that content into European Portuguese. Our Spanish localization team, we do have one. They are not a data group, so they could use some help. We have a page on the wiki that list of our localization projects. And yes?
So you mean Portuguese are going to be two different locations?
Yes, there are two different ones. Now that's actually something that I actually wanted to talk to you about. Would it be, is it preferred for you guys to have separate Brazilian and European Portuguese?
Right.
That's the way you prefer. That's what we thought, so that's why we went ahead and split them up. Because we had heard comments that having them as one wasn't really working very well. So that's good to know. That is the way you want it. And then we can, but like I said, if it's useful to look at the European Portuguese versions of pages, go ahead. Otherwise, start with the English and work from there.
Because actually there are a lot of articles in Brazilian Portuguese.
Are there?
Even they were identified like Brazilian Portuguese because it was only one Portuguese located.
But they were actually.
But they were actually.
Oh, that's interesting. I didn't realize that. Well, that's really interesting to know. Well, if you find any that are like that, feel free to copy them. I have to admit, I can't tell the difference because I don't know any Portuguese at all. So, otherwise, we would have tried to do that already. So we do have a page which has a list of the various localization teams. You can add your name to the list for Brazilian Portuguese if you wish. There is nobody there yet. You can, if you're a Spanish speaker, similarly, you can put yourself on the list of people who are working on the Spanish localization. That's fantastic. You can just search the wiki for localization and localization projects, and that page should come up. Otherwise, this is the link. I will make sure that these notes get made, these slides get made available for download as well, so that you can find this information. We have a page which is a list of articles that we think are among the most important for getting translated. We have a short URL for that list over here on the chalkboard so that you can go there and take a look. Because basically we thought that it would be helpful for you guys to have a list of kind of an advanced list of places to look for documentation that would be useful to get translated. Let's go on. So demo time. I'm going to do a very short demonstration of what the software looks like and how it works. Let's see if I can switch to your give me one moment. Good. All right. Okay. Hey, you guys can see my face. Okay, so developer new. I'm just going to pick a page for this. Oh, I can't find the server. I'm offline. Fantastic. Oh, this is going to be great.
Mozilla wasn't working as well.
What's that?
Try headquarters Sala 2.
Say 614.
This one was working, yeah.
There we go. All right. Okay. So here's this would look better on a larger screen. But so here's basically what the page looks like. Up at the top here we have our report button. Feel free to use it as often as you like. whenever you have any kind of problem. This is just a page in our DOM reference here. There's an example, and you can simply, in fact, this is the page I used for the screenshots for the site, or for the presentation. You can switch to another localization using the languages drop down. So here's the Spanish version of the page. Oh, awesome. Okay, so we're going to go back to the English version of the page. I'll have to look into that. So we can add a translation. And we will pick Brazilian Portuguese. And now we have this. Now obviously this editor is a little more friendly in a larger screen. That's pretty weird. Okay. This works on a screen that is bigger. Okay. So I'm going to file a bug. So I'm going to show you that. There's my demo right now. I'm going to file a bug. So I click to the report a bug button. And it takes you to this handy form. My issue is not listed. Okay. That wasn't the most useful bug report, but it gets the job done, and I can fix it later. Anyway, so apparently I'm not going to be demonstrating the translation interface like I had intended. So let's throw away those changes. And okay, let's just look at the regular editor. I'll bet that will work better. Where are you? There we go. The connection is just a tad slow. Yeah, we're going to have to do some work on that. So, like I mentioned, we're still working on this this new wiki. In fact, we haven't opened it completely to the public yet. We're hoping to this coming week. So we have these script-like templates that you're going to find, and these are things to automate certain things. Since you're going to be doing mostly translation work, it should be fairly easy to just do exactly the same thing that the English version is doing. Giving a complete lesson in how to use these is probably a little much for today. If you run into cases where you have any questions about anything, feel free to ask me or me, because I don't think we have anybody else here who knows it nearly as well as I do. Or you can ask any of the people in orange vests, and if they don't know the answer, they will come and get me. We do have several of our volunteers in orange vests who speak very good English, as well as being native Portuguese or Spanish speakers. So we have people who can help with translation as needed. For those of you whose English may not be, fantastic, because I know that a lot of you have very good English, and some of you, your English is only okay. So I want to make sure that we're able to communicate, and that's why we have helpers here. So, anyway, this is the editor. It's very easy to use. The toolbar should be pretty self-explanatory, pretty obvious to anybody who's done any editing since 1990 or so. So I won't get into a lot of detail there. You can, if you're feeling particularly insane, you can go into source mode and edit the HTML directly. I don't recommend this. Probably the main thing to know is that if you want to change styles, you can go here, and this gives you, it lets you change to these various styles, note boxes, warning boxes, things like that. Very, very easy to work with. So that's a very quick look at how the software works. And again, like I said, if you have any questions about how to use it, feel free to ask. That's what we're here for. And I think with that, it's time to move back to my presentation for one last very simple slide. If I can find the, here we go, and contact information so that you can reach me. The current site, the one that we're moving away from, is at developer.mozilla.org. The new one is developer-new.mozilla.org, but it will be becoming this hopefully in the next week or two. My name again is Eric Shepard. I'm on Twitter, Sheppy. You can email me if you like, eShepard or sheppy@mozilla.com. And that's where my blog is if anybody cares. And I think that was it. So, I really appreciate it.
And a few last announcements. We have coffee and snacks coming soon. And we also have room 611 down the hall if you want to spread out more. And we'll go back and forth.